We call it the push button podcast because the idea is your effort into the podcast should be pushing the start record button and pushing the stop record button. And then our team does everything.
That's exactly what it is. And then I send an email to Brooke that says, here's some links I know about the guest, and boom. And then it turns out like wonderful.
Ready to go. And we do everything else. So there's a couple of things that go into that though. So early on in the process, getting a podcast set up, there's a lot of things that and not just in the legal space, but all the spaces that we run into where people are starting podcasts, is there's always these big questions like, how do I get my lights and my microphone and my camera to set up? So during our onboarding process, we help our clients get those things set up and get the right gear purchased and get those things done.
Welcome to the Renegade Lawyer Podcast, the show where we ask the questions, why aren't more lawyers living flourishing lives and inspiring others? And can you really get wealthy while doing only the work you love with people you like? Many lawyers are. Get ready to hear from your host, Ben Glass, the founder of the law firm Ben Glass Law in Fairfax, Virginia, and Great Legal Marketing, an organization that helps good people succeed by coaching, inspiring, and supporting law firm owners. Join us for today's conversation.
Hey everyone, this is Ben. Welcome back to the Renegade Lawyer Podcast. This is actually a special edition of the podcast. This is all about Great Legal Marketing Summit 2023 in Orlando, October 12 and 11. And I'm going on a little listening tour and speaking tour and talking to a lot of the folks who are going to be speakers and vendors and sponsors at the event. And today I've got Richard Matthews on the line and on the video here. Richard's got a really neat company. It's called Push Button Podcasts. I was introduced to Richard and his company a couple of months ago at Richard James's event where I spoke there. We then signed a deal over dinner, if you recall, Richard. And so the Renegade Lawyer Podcast had our interview format that you see, and you see all the promotions on LinkedIn and other social media. That's all Richard and his team. So they're doing a great job for us. So I thought it would be great to have him at the summit. And I just wanted to get you on the line for a few minutes here, Richard, to kind of talk about, I think, we live in a world, I think most people understand the value of podcasts, but let's talk about that for a bit. And then talk to folks about what attendees will hear from you at the summit in October.
Absolutely, yeah. So to cover, podcasts are actually, they overtook radio a couple of years ago, and they're continuing a trajectory up where, especially as more and more short form content is becoming popular, I know everyone's seeing like YouTube Shorts, Facebook Reels, TikTok, those are all taking off. And what it's leaving a hole in the market for is the more in-depth, longer form content. And a lot of creators are starting to find that if they want to actually take their audience somewhere more than just the couple of seconds they see with you on the short stuff, that you have to have some sort of long form content. And that's where podcasting is starting to really take off. And they're expecting podcasting to be as big as online video, YouTube, in the next year or two, which is crazy. So it's a really fast growing space. And podcasting has the terminology for it has expanded over the years, where it used to be just audio shows that you heard on iTunes, right? And it's since become like Apple Podcasts, and it's expanded into, now you're seeing a lot of video podcasts as well. And you'll see, big names like Grant Cardone or the Daily Wire that have their podcasts on YouTube. They have their podcasts on iTunes, their audio and video, they're doing daily stuff. So podcasting has become sort of an umbrella term for regular serialized content coming from creators, newscasters, local businesses that are looking to show up in all of the online places with good in-depth content.
So I think one of the challenges for lawyers is, hey, if I start a podcast, I'm not really sure what I'm going to talk about. I will say that at our highest level mastermind group, which we call our Icon Mastermind Group, we've got a number of lawyers there who do podcasts, and they may be, in one case, a criminal defense attorney, in another case, a personal injury attorney. And one of the things they're doing, Richard, is they're actually interviewing and celebritizing local business owners, local political leaders, local community leaders. And I think that's a really great idea, because I think the last thing you want to do is have a podcast where you're talking every week about the 17 ways to get money out of an insurance company through an automobile accident case. But what are some of the things that you have seen your clients do to really, have interesting, creative content? In our case, week after week, and in many weeks, we've got multiple podcasts going out. What have you seen? What do you recommend, particularly lawyers, think about?
There's a couple of things that are really interesting with the types of content that you can do. And so the talk we'll actually be giving at the event is going to be on the two different types of podcasts and how those fit in for local businesses. We're going to talk a little bit about a couple of different types of leverage that go into the podcast types. One of those leverage types is what I call your high value prospecting and high value referral partnerships. And that's one type of content that you can do on your podcast. And it's something I know you're doing, and I know several of our clients who run local businesses are doing, where the podcast is not necessarily just about law. Although you can do stuff about law, and it's useful to have content that shows your expertise in the area. You can also use the podcast as a way to invite all your local business owners and the restaurant owners and the car dealerships, owners and the political leaders and the people who run the Chamber of Commerce. And you can use a podcast. I call it sort of like a relationship hacking, because you can take 45 minutes or an hour with someone, invite them over to your studio space, or meet on some place like this where we're meeting on Riverside, and meet face to face and talk for a little while. And you exchange stories and you exchange happenings, and you talk about what their work is impacting the community. You talk about how your work is impacting the community, and your audience starts to see both your expertise, and you lift up their expertise as well, and you're building those relationships for again, high value partners, high value relationships, and potentially high value prospecting. So it's a really good way. That's one really good way to do content.
Yeah, and I think the sort of marketing hack, if you want to use that phrase, is how can I make this great for you, like for the guest? Like, what would be a perfect interview for you, and how can I help you? And we try to instill that mindset in all of our members, particularly as they go out to create and cement referral sources. So, for example, we do personal injury, long-term disability, but getting local lawyers and other non-competing practice areas on our show. And what's interesting, Richard, is that even though I have a podcast, Brian has a podcast, we're about ready to release a private podcast for members, like podcasting is in our DNA. For most people, they still find it to be like, holy cow, how would you do that? It's got to be really hard. So talk to us, and you have proven, no, it's not really hard. I think the hardest part probably for most people is getting guests, like getting people on the program. But in terms of technology and what your team is offering in the back end once a podcast is recorded, talk to us a little bit about that, because I think it's one of the reasons we invited you to come to the summit, because you've really made this, I think, a brain dead easy decision for anyone who can conduct a reasonably interesting interview to add podcasts as another media to their arsenal. But what does your team do, and what's that process look like a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we call it the push button podcast, because the idea is your effort into the podcast should be pushing the start record button and pushing the stop record button. And then our team does everything.
That's exactly what it is. And then I send an email to Brooke that says, here's some links I know about the guest, and boom. And then it turns out like wonderful.
And it's ready to go. And we do everything else. So there's a couple of things that go into that, though. So early on in the process, getting a podcast set up, there's a lot of things that and not just in the legal space, but in all the spaces that we run into where people are starting podcasts, is there's always these big questions like, how do I get my lights and my microphone and my camera to set up? So during our onboarding process, we help our clients get those things set up and get the right gear purchased and get those things done. We also do content planning sessions where we actually will help you map out the first year's worth of content for your podcast, to include being able to get interviews on. So you have interesting, like, expert content from your own that you're putting out into the marketplace, and also being able to invite the community into your podcast. You can do both of those things. We can plan a whole year's worth of content in 30 minutes. It's we get a lot of positive feedback from our clients on that. So we help you with the content planning sessions as well. And then we help you set up all the technology and everything that goes on. So like the first couple of weeks is all the onboarding stuff. We get website set up, we get your social media account set up, we get all of the assets set up. So like in order to do a good multimedia podcast, you're going to have intro sequences, outro sequences, commercial sequences, voiceover actors. I got a ferret in there who's throwing stuff around. Hopefully it's not come across too much. But and there's a lot of pieces that go into having all the assets done. So we take the first couple of weeks and get all those assets done and created with you and get them all approved and everything. We have dedicated graphic designers, we have dedicated voice actors, we have dedicated video editors, we have dedicated audio editors, the whole bit. And you just mentioned Brooke. Brooke is our project manager. She's fantastic. So you get a whole team of people that are working on your behalf to get your podcast going. Once that's done, once the onboarding is done, all we ask from our clients is one recording session a month, where you spend maybe 2-3 hours and you have a couple of guests come in that you can schedule on your calendar, and maybe a couple of face to camera, or you and maybe someone else in your practice come on and talk about some legal topics or something that's relevant to your business. And you get us If it's a 4-week month, get us 4 episodes. If it's a 5-week month, get us 5 episodes. So maybe it's 2.5 hours, every time we have a 5-week month. And you get us all those recordings, and then our team does everything else. We do all the audio editing, we do all the video editing, we do all the transcriptions, we do all the show note writing, we publish everything to your website, we publish to YouTube, we publish to iTunes Network, and then we create short content from every single piece that we get, so that the long form publishing happens once a week, and the short form publishing happens every single day of the week thereafter, promoting the long form content. So you end up with 365 days a year of content going out from that one recording session once a week.
It's really interesting. So yes, I did spend time in the onboarding process. Folks will find that Richard is a very systems and process oriented guy, so he makes that part really easy. And then, the first couple episodes, your team was sending me, hey, approve this, approve that. I'm like, okay, I looked at it. It's really good. So go ahead and publish it, because your team is just really good, and we're not, stepping over any lines. And so when folks see both the promos for this thing that we're recording right now, which is our talk about your talk at the summit, and the podcast itself, this was all done on Richard's platform and with Richard's team, Push Button Podcasts. And so it really is push button easy. And even the technology today is really easy to get. And, most people have fast internet and stuff, but there's actually some technology that makes it so that even if your internet isn't perfect, it's the product, the audio and the video that comes out is still perfect itself.
Hey guys, this is Ben. If you like what you've been hearing on this podcast, not just the marketing and practice building strategies, but the philosophy of the art of living your best life parts, you should know that my son Brian and I have built a tribe of like-minded lawyers who are living lives of their own design and creating tremendous value for the world within the structure of a law practice. We invite you to join us at the only membership organization for entrepreneurial lawyers that is run by 2 full-time practicing attorneys. Check us out at greatlegalmarketing.com.
So great. If people in the interim, Richard, want to go and find out more about Push Button Podcasts, I could guess at a URL. Why don't you share the URL? And again, Richard will be with us October 12th through 14 in Orlando. If you haven't signed up, go to glmsummit.com. There's a red button near the top of that first page, which is GLM Summit Report. Download that. It doesn't take any email. It's an instant download to your laptop or your desktop, and it will tell you everything you need to know about dates, times, what we're doing, who's going to be there, what the cost is, all of that stuff. But Richard, in the interim, where could they go to check you out?
If they want to find me or find our company, just go to Push Button Podcasts. That's with an S, pushbuttonpodcasts.com. You should be able to find us. There is a book, a demo on there. We'll actually go through and show you all the systems that Ben mentioned. You can see all the back-end stuff. I tell all of my clients, I was like, there's nothing magical about what we do, right? We're an execution wing for your company that you can just hire, and we'll make sure all these things happen. So you can see the back end of all of our systems. We'll show you what those look like, introduce you to anyone on the team. If you want to go through and before we even do any work together, see what a content planning session looks like for your business, we can do something like that as well, show you some of those things. We get a lot of positive feedback for that. And then the other thing that I just want to point out, and it's been really valuable for me and a lot of our clients, is we run our entire business on a referral system. And so if you just let us know that you came from Ben's stuff, we actually do pay a referral commission. We have several of our clients that we actually pay them more money than they pay us every month to run their podcast because they refer business to us. And that's how we like to run our company, is that we share that out and run those things. So just in interest of both full disclosure and because I want to make sure that I look at all of the relationships with myself, with my clients as a partnership. We're coming in to help grow your company, and in return, our company grows and we do good work together.
You're an American capital, value into the world. That's right. Create value, work with great partners, and help the world just get better. So great. Hey, Richard, thanks for spending some time with me today. Again, we look forward to having you down in Orlando, and I look forward to continually to press your team to put out all of the content that we're actually fortunate to be able to produce in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been enjoying your show as well internally. The team has let me know they like the content you guys produce and the personality and fun and the joy that you guys have. So it's cool.
Thank you, sir. All right, talk soon.
Bye.
If you like what you just heard on the Renegade Lawyer podcast, you may be a perfect fit for the great legal marketing community. Law firm owners across the country are becoming heroes to their families and icons in their communities. They've gone renegade by rejecting the status quo of the legal profession. so they can deliver high-quality legal services coupled with top-notch customer service to clients who pay, stay, and refer. Learn more at greatlegalmarketing.com. That's greatlegalmarketing.com.